Welcome, dear brave listener. You're tuning in to Careful TV, and I'm truly grateful you're here. Whether you're tuning in during the day or late at night, thank you for choosing to spend a part of your time with me. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and means more than you know. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, what brought you here, or even what kind of story you'd like to hear next. Your support keeps this channel going, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let's get into today's horror story. I don't usually post online about my life, but what happened last year still creeps me out when I think about it too long. It's one of those stories that feels ridiculous when you say it out loud, like it shouldn't have happened, not in a normal world. But it did. I lived it. My name's Elijah. At the time, I was 24 and working a hybrid job at a media analytics firm in Chicago. I split my time between working from home and commuting to a WeWork-style office near River North twice a week. I'd lived in the same two-bedroom apartment in Logan Square for about 2 years with a guy named Drew, a grad student in public health. We weren't close, but we got along, split the bills, shared groceries, and didn't step on each other's toes. Then out of nowhere, Drew texts me one weekend and says he's moving in with his girlfriend in Evanston. Said it was sudden, but he had to take the chance. He was out by the following Friday, left me the keys, and that was that. He'd already changed his address and even Venmo'd me half the rent for the next month. Said it was the least he could do. I wasn't mad, just caught off guard. The problem wasn't the rent. I made enough to cover it solo for a while if I had to. The problem was the fact that I'd been dealing with something way worse in secret. A stalker. I never talked about her to most people. We met on Reddit, of all places, in a niche film subreddit where I posted short reviews and commentary. She replied to one of my threads, and at first it was just normal internet talk. Then she started DMing me. A lot. Asking about my favorite films, if I had Letterboxd, what music I listened to while writing. At first, it was flattering, then it became overwhelming. When I ignored her for a day or two, she'd spam messages. I blocked her, and she just made another account. She found my Instagram, then my work email. The messages got weirder, screenshots of my old blog, vague threats, lines from my college thesis. Then she crossed the line. She sent a picture of the front of my building with the caption, "Cute place, corner unit?" I filed a police report. Got some advice, started switching up my routes home, keeping blinds closed, changing passwords, but the sick part was, I didn't even know her real name, just a username. That made any restraining order next to impossible. So when Drew left, I panicked a little. Not just because the place would be quiet and too big for me alone, but because I didn't want to be alone, and breaking the lease would tank my credit. I needed someone. Fast. I made a Craigslist post that same night. Simple stuff, room available in Logan Square, month to month, furnished, must pass background check. I figured if anything weird came through, I'd just ignore it. I got 6 replies, 4 were dead ends, 1 was a scam, but one seemed good. Her name was Claire. She said she was 26, a medical assistant at a dermatology clinic, recently moved back to the city after a breakup. Her message was short but friendly. She used punctuation, didn't ask weird questions, said she had references if needed. We set up a video call the next evening. She seemed normal, soft-spoken, polite, had this kind of calming voice that made you lean in a little without realizing. She asked smart questions about the space, about what utilities were included, if there were laundry facilities. Her camera showed a plain room behind her with one large window and a suitcase in the corner. "You seem chill," she said. "If it's still open, I'd love to come see it." We set up a time for that Saturday afternoon. She showed up right on time, carrying a reusable shopping tote and a small leather backpack. She looked the same as on video. Slim, dark hair pulled back, clear skin, dark jeans and a long coat, even though it was barely 60 degrees. We walked through the place. I gave her the basics, the Wi-Fi code, where the dishes were, the best Thai spot around the corner. She barely spoke, just nodded a lot and smiled with this weird sort of, I don't know. Not nervous, not eager, just controlled. That's the word. She said she liked the space. Asked if she could move in that Sunday. I hesitated. Everything felt too fast. I usually meet people twice before making a decision, I told her. She smiled, tilted her head. That's fair. Want to grab a coffee or something? It was too late to back out. We walked to a cafe 2 blocks down. She got a black coffee. I got a hot chocolate. We talked about nothing really. Music, her work, the city. She seemed bland, but safe. The kind of person you wouldn't remember in a crowd. I let her move in. The first few days were quiet. She kept to herself. We exchanged hellos in the morning, passed in the kitchen, occasionally talked about shows we were watching. She didn't have many belongings, just a suitcase, a laptop, a makeup bag, and a couple stacks of books that stayed in her room. She paid me first and last month's rent in cash. Then small things started happening. The apartment always smelled faintly like citrus, but now it smelled like dried roses and iron. I assumed she had a weird diffuser or incense, but I never saw one. Once I came home early and thought I heard her talking softly in her room. I paused outside her door, but the words didn't make sense, just soft murmurs and a kind of whispering rhythm. When I knocked, she stopped. She opened the door a second later, smiled. Hey, you're home early. Yeah, just wanted to ask if you were okay. Heard talking. She blinked slowly. Oh, I was on the phone. Sorry if it was loud. It wasn't loud. It was strange. Then there were the birds. I'd find small feathers near the balcony door. Once I found a dead pigeon on the fire escape, laid out flat like it had been posed. I asked Claire if she'd seen it. She said no. Her face didn't even move. The straw that broke it wasn't what you'd expect. It was a post-it note. I keep a corkboard above my desk where I pin up reminders, bill due dates, appointment cards, movie tickets I like to keep. One morning, I saw a new post-it on the board written in handwriting that wasn't mine. You are being watched. I stared at it for a long time. Claire was in the kitchen making tea. Did you write this? I asked. She turned slowly, held her cup midair. What? This? I held up the note. She walked over, glanced at it, shrugged. I didn't write that. I didn't believe her. I started checking my room more carefully, keeping my door locked when I left. I even started sleeping with white noise again, anything to drown out the unease. Then one night, around 1 a.m., I woke up to my bedroom door creaking open. I never sleep with it unlocked. Never. The door opened just a few inches, and I sat up. Claire? I called out. Nothing. Then, from behind the door, I heard a whisper. Too low to make out, but definitely a voice. I got up slowly, heart thudding, and opened the door the rest of the way. Nobody there. I checked her room. The door was cracked open. She was sitting in bed, facing the window, perfectly still. Her eyes were wide open, but she wasn't blinking. I backed away. The next day, she was gone. All her stuff vanished. The suitcase, the books, the bag, everything, like she'd never been there. There wasn't even a note. I called her number. Disconnected. Checked her email. Bounced. Later that night, I went through my Craigslist inbox to try to find the original message she sent me. It wasn't there. Not just hers. None of the replies were there. Not even Daniel, a guy I remembered rejecting politely. The whole thread was wiped clean, like I never posted the ad at all. I called Craigslist support. They said the listing was auto-removed for a violation of terms, but couldn't give me specifics. No one could explain the missing messages. It's been months now. Nothing else has happened. No signs of Claire, no strange smells, no dead birds. But sometimes I still find a single feather in the hallway. Or I'll catch something in the corner of my eye. Just the flicker of a shadow that's there and gone. I double-check my doors now, triple-check my passwords. I don't post publicly anymore. And I never use Craigslist for roommates. I was 19 the summer I moved to Richmond for college. I'd been accepted to VCU, and although I was excited to start fresh, finding housing on a student budget was rough. Dorms were full, and the only apartments I could afford were already snatched up. My mom and I were spending hours on Craigslist, hoping something halfway decent and not completely sketchy would turn up before classes started. Then she found an ad, private room in a house just outside the city, $325 a month, utilities included. No pets, female tenants only. The owner lived on the property but said in the listing that he had a separate entrance and full basement apartment, so he rarely interacted with the upstairs roommates. Said he preferred women because past male roommates had been messy and disruptive. I wasn't thrilled about a live-in landlord, but the price was unbeatable and the neighborhood wasn't far from campus. So one Saturday afternoon, we drove out to see it. The street was quiet. tree-lined with older single-family homes. Some a little worn down, but nothing that screamed danger. The house was a faded yellow ranch style with decent landscaping and a bird feeder out front. Honestly, it looked normal, too normal. A man answered the door, maybe mid-50s, heavy-set with thinning gray hair and glasses. He introduced himself as Jim, shook both our hands, and welcomed us in with a wide smile. I'm Rachel, by the way. I usually go with gut instinct, and something about that handshake stuck with me. It was too long. Not firm, not limp, just lingering. The living room was surprisingly clean. Neutral walls, beige carpet, and a flat-screen TV mounted above a fake fireplace. There was no clutter, no weird smell. Honestly, it looked like a staged open house. My mom started chatting with Jim right away. She's the extroverted type, asks people about their kids, pets, retirement plans, whatever. I just stood there quietly, scanning the space. So you'll be upstairs with the other girls, Jim said, motioning toward the hallway. But let me show you around the whole house first. That was when he opened a door I assumed led to a closet or maybe a garage. But no, it was a narrow staircase leading down to a basement. My mom followed him without hesitation. I hesitated but didn't want to look weird, so I went after them. The basement was something else. Clean, sure, but cold. Not just temperature-wise, though it was definitely chilly, but cold in a way that felt deliberate. No warmth, no signs of life. The lighting was dim, just a single lamp on a side table. He led us into a small room just off the main area, no windows, no closet, a bed, a small desk, and a tall dresser with one drawer slightly open. The bed was made with crisp white sheets and a navy throw pillow. It felt like a hotel room that no one had stayed in. "This would be your room," he said, smiling. My mom blinked. "I thought you said the rooms for rent were upstairs?" "They are, but one of them just moved out unexpectedly and left this space open. Rent's even cheaper. Only $275. You just share the bathroom out there with me. But I'm rarely around. I work nights sometimes and I've got a separate entrance, so you'd hardly know I'm here." I turned to my mom, eyebrows raised. She looked mildly confused but nodded, still being polite. "It's a nice setup," she said, looking around. I didn't respond. I just took in the fact that there was no closet, no windows, a locked door at the far end of the hallway, and no door on the room he claimed was his bedroom. Just an open archway and a full view of an unmade bed and a nightstand with a Bible, a flashlight, and what looked like a roll of duct tape. That part gave me a chill. We went back upstairs and he showed us the other rooms. They were all open, and I took the opportunity to look around while he launched into stories about the girls who used to live there. One had a drinking problem, he said. Another hooked up with too many guys and caused problems with the neighbors. Each story got more detailed, almost gleeful in the way he described their flaws. I peeked into all three rooms. They were furnished. Dark wooden bed frames, generic dressers, matching lamps, but that was it. No clothes, no toiletries, nothing personal. One closet had 2 men's jackets pushed to the corner. Another room had a suitcase, unzipped and empty, lying on the bed like it had been packed but never taken anywhere. When I checked the bathrooms, same thing. Soap on the sink, nothing in the cabinets, nothing in the shower, but a single bar of ivory. It didn't add up. 3 women supposedly lived here, but there wasn't a single visible sign of them, just the kind of set dressing that looked good for a walk-through. I tried to make eye contact with my mom to signal that we needed to go, but she was still locked into conversation with Jim. He was telling her about how hard it was to find respectful tenants, that some girls were too entitled these days, that I seemed like the quiet type, and he appreciated that. Said it more than once. Then he brought up our earlier conversation at the door, how Mom had said she and my stepdad were going to Lake Gaston the following weekend, but I couldn't go because of work. "You should come by next Friday," he said, smiling at me. "We'll do dinner with the roommates so you can see how everyone gets along. Make a night of it." I nodded automatically, just to keep the conversation moving. Once we got into the car, I turned to my mom and said, flat out, "There's no way I'm living there." She looked surprised. "Really? He seemed so nice, and it's a good deal. Plus, those other girls seemed like they were respectful." "There are no other girls," I interrupted. "Did you look in those rooms? They were empty. There's no way anyone's actually living in that house." She blinked, starting to protest, but I kept going. The basement room had no window, no closet. His bedroom didn't even have a door. He wants me down there sharing a bathroom with him? Alone? And did you hear the way he talked about the girls who used to live there? Like he was picking apart their personal lives for fun. My mom looked rattled, but still unsure. I could tell she wanted to believe he was just an awkward older man, that I was overthinking things. I didn't press it further in the car. But that night, I told my stepdad everything. He didn't hesitate. Told my mom there was no way she was letting me rent from that guy. When she heard it from him, it finally clicked. We tried reporting the Craigslist post, but by the time we got home, it was already taken down. That more than anything confirmed what I'd been thinking. This guy was hiding something. Whether it was sex trafficking or worse, I don't know. But he had that place set up like a stage. Rooms made to look occupied, stories made to sound believable, a basement with no escape, a dinner invitation on the one weekend I'd be completely alone. I think he planned to lock me in. I still get chills thinking about it, how close I came to brushing off my instincts just to save some rent. I don't know what would have happened if I'd shown up for that dinner. But I know this. Trust your gut. Always. And never rent a room in a house where no one else seems to exist. Back in 2022, I was at a low point. I just quit a job that had completely ground me down, emotionally, mentally, and honestly, even physically. It was the kind of place where you were expected to smile at meetings while quietly burning out behind your eyes. After almost 3 years, I'd finally had enough. I left without a backup plan. I told myself I'd freelance until I found something better, something that didn't make me dread getting out of bed in the morning. That decision felt freeing for about 2 weeks. Then the math started catching up. I was doing some editing work on Upwork, copywriting for startups I'd never heard of, and formatting resumes for college kids. It paid okay, some weeks better than others, but not enough to hold on to my studio apartment in the Strip District. Rent was nearly $1,200, and that didn't include utilities. I knew I had to make a change fast, so I started looking at shared housing, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, those basement-level apartment finders that look like they haven't been updated since 2007. I figured maybe I could rent a room for a while, stay under the radar until something more stable came along. My name's Alina, by the way. I was 27 when this happened, and even though I told myself I was just being practical, the truth is I was running out of options. My savings were almost gone, and the thought of asking my parents for help again made me feel nauseous. I was trying to do this on my own. I didn't want to move back in with anyone. I didn't want to explain what I'd been through or why I left my job. I just wanted to quietly disappear into a safe, cheap space where I could think again. That's how I ended up on Craigslist one night in October. It was late. I was in bed with my laptop, hoodie pulled tight, the light from the screen making the rest of my apartment look even darker. I found a listing that actually looked decent. Room for rent in private home, quiet residential street, 550 osmo, all utilities included. Looking for a respectful tenant, female preferred. That alone made me pause. Female preferred, not required, but preferred. That's usually code for a guy who doesn't want to deal with other guys, which I sort of understood, but it still made me wary. The pictures weren't flashy, but they looked real. A small room with hardwood floors, a clean bedspread, a narrow window with white curtains. There was a bookshelf in the corner and a desk facing the wall. No obvious red flags. The house was located in Lakefield, a suburb about 45 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. I didn't know much about it, but I looked it up. Quiet. Mostly older families and retirees, lower rent, slower pace. It sounded like a decent place to lay low. I messaged the listing before I could talk myself out of it. Just a quick blurb. Hi, my name's Alina, and I'm looking for a room starting in November. I work remote freelance and tend to keep to myself. Would love to learn more about the space. He called back within an hour. His name was Tom. Deep, slow voice, sounded calm, normal, a little too chatty maybe, but not pushy. He asked basic questions, what I did, if I smoked or drank, if I had any pets when I'd be looking to move in. He told me he lived in the house, but had converted the basement into his own unit. Separate entrance, his own kitchen, so the upstairs tenant would have a lot of privacy. The room had its own bathroom, he said. Shared kitchen, but again, I barely use it. I cook downstairs. You'd hardly see me. I asked how long it had been available. A couple of weeks, he said. Had someone come by, but she decided she wanted to be closer to the city. I'm not in a rush, I just want to find someone respectful and quiet. He kept using that word. Respectful. We set a time to meet that Sunday afternoon. Lakefield looked like every small-town suburb you've ever driven through. One grocery store, a few gas stations, a diner with faded awnings. The houses were mostly modest and built close together, like people used to care more about neighborhoods and less about fences. Tom's place was at the end of a cul-de-sac. Pale blue siding, trimmed hedges, American flag on the porch. Very standard. He greeted me at the door wearing a forest green pullover and khakis. He looked like someone's dad. Mid-50s, salt and pepper beard, a little thick in the middle. His glasses sat low on his nose. Friendly eyes, I guess. Friendly smile, the kind that makes you relax a little even if you don't want to. Alina? He said, extending a hand. Glad you found it okay. The inside of the house smelled like cinnamon. I remember that clearly. Not overpowering, just faint, like there had been a candle burning earlier, but now it was gone. The living room had a leather couch, a few framed nature photos, and a TV with a local news channel playing on mute. He showed me the upstairs room first. It was exactly like the photo. Small, clean, minimal. The narrow window overlooked the backyard. There was a little closet with a sliding door, a dresser, and a plain desk. The bed had a neutral-colored comforter, no pillows besides the standard two. The carpet was vacuumed and a little too spotless. The bathroom was right across the hall. White tile, clean sink, no toothbrush or soap or anything that looked like it had been used. No one's been in there since the last tenant left, he said, seeing me glance around. I wiped things down weekly just to keep it fresh. I nodded, though something about it struck me as too prepared. I asked if anyone else had lived there recently. He paused, just a beat too long. Then, had a few people over the years. Some stayed a few months. One got married and moved to Tennessee. He chuckled lightly. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was, but I smiled anyway. He led me back downstairs and offered me a glass of water. I declined. He was still talking about the house, the neighborhood, his past tenants. Then he said casually, "You're welcome to come by next weekend for dinner if you're still deciding. Meet the dog, see how it feels." I blinked. "Oh, you have a dog?" He smiled again. "Yep. Quiet little guy. Probably wouldn't even notice him." But now I was paying closer attention. I hadn't seen a dog bowl, leash, toys, or fur anywhere. Not even a smell. Every house with a dog has some trace of it. There was nothing here. I left a few minutes later saying I'd think about it. He nodded like he expected that. In the car, I sat for a minute before starting the engine. Something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it. There was no obvious danger, but the whole thing felt staged. Too clean, too polite, too generic. Back at my apartment, I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was being judgmental, maybe he was just old-fashioned. But the nagging feeling stayed. I did a reverse search on his phone number. It came up tied to a business that no longer existed. A heating and repair company that had gone under in 2015. Same address. I checked public property records next. No rental license, no tenant complaints, no reviews, nothing. Just a dead zone of digital information. I brought it up casually to a friend over lunch that week. She frowned when I told her. "Please don't move in there," she said. "You remember the Craigslist killer stuff, right?" Those guys don't always look creepy. Sometimes they seem normal as hell. That night, the feeling was back, heavier now. I searched missing women Lakefield, PA, just to quiet my mind. I didn't expect to find anything, but I did. Her name was Elise Morano, 26, last seen in 2018. The article was small, barely picked up by major outlets. She had been living with a male landlord in Lakefield when she vanished. No forced entry, no signs of a struggle, no suspect. There was a photo of her smiling on a hiking trail. Brown hair, pale pink jacket with a fur collar. The same jacket was in the photo of the Craigslist room, hanging on the wall behind the bedroom door. I rechecked the listing to be sure. Same color, same trim, same wear on the sleeves. My stomach dropped. I created a burner email and messaged Tom again, anonymously. Just a vague inquiry about the room. He responded within an hour. "Yes, still available, Val. Still hoping to find a respectful, quiet tenant who doesn't ask too many questions." I reported the listing to Craigslist. Then I took everything I had, the coat, the address, the article, to the police. At first, they didn't seem that interested. I wasn't a victim. I hadn't been hurt. There was no crime, but I insisted. I told them about the missing rental license. I showed them the coat. I gave them Tom's name, the burner messages, the time-stamped photos. Eventually, they agreed to take a report. Months passed. I heard nothing. Then, in July 2023, I saw the headline, "Man arrested in connection with multiple disappearances tied to Craigslist rental scheme in Pennsylvania." The man was Thomas Whitaker. Same address, same house, same quiet street in Lakefield. They found remains in a wooded lot 5 miles from his house. 3 confirmed victims. One was Elise, the other 2 were still unidentified. Investigators said his setup was meticulously organized, a way to lure women in, isolate them, and make them vanish. No history of violence, no record, just a furnished room, a clean house, and a pattern. I never told my mom, never told anyone in my family. I still have the email he sent. I never responded. I think about how close I came, how I sat on that bed, how I walked through that hallway, how I shook his hand at the door. He had a space for me already. A spy. Like I was part of a plan I didn't know I'd almost stepped into. I don't use Craigslist anymore. I don't meet landlords alone. I don't go anywhere without leaving a pin drop and texting 3 people. People laugh and say I'm paranoid, but I don't care. Some predators wear ski masks. Some use chloroform and duct tape. But some, they just use soft voices. Clean rooms, cinnamon candles, and a photo of a coat that should have disappeared 4 years ago. If something feels wrong, trust yourself. I did, and it might have saved my life.